Greetings. I am Emma from Maryland. In this serene neighborhood characterized by tree-lined streets and delightful rows of houses, I reside, having experienced my youth in this tranquil setting, filled with simple pleasures and steadfast familial connections. My mother, a figure of modest elegance and infinite warmth, possesses a brilliant smile. The sunbeam that brightened our days from dawn as she busied herself in the kitchen preparing breakfast to the quiet tranquility of nightfall. She treasured that small kitchen, her domain, where the scent of love and comfort perpetually lingered. My father, a man of stoic strength and steadfast devotion, spoke little, yet his actions conveyed profound meaning. He labored diligently, his commitment serving as a silent testament to the love he bore for our family, ensuring we were consistently provided for and secure. Our home was modest, unassuming, yet it contained a universe of love within its walls. My childhood memories are imbued with hues of contentment and joy, a period of idyllic innocence, or so it appeared. However, at the tender age of 15, the world as I knew it disintegrated when my mother was abruptly taken by an illness that struck her with sudden ferocity. It transpired so swiftly and unexpectedly that I scarcely comprehended the reality of her absence before it became an undeniable void. The emptiness that ensued was a gaping wound in the fabric of our family. I observed my father succumb to a loneliness that seemed to engulf him. Our home, once a haven of laughter and shared moments, now resonated with a silence that was deafening. We persevered. I attended school. Each morning, I came home. Each night, I departed. The identical kitchen and uncomplicated meals persisted, although the essence of my mother and the warmth of her presence had dissipated, resulting in a profound anguish that no regularity could alleviate. Each meal consisted only of the two of us. Now, father and daughter, yet an imperceptible chasm had emerged between us at a distance that extended well beyond the confines of our residence. We were two isolated entities adrift in a vast ocean of collective sorrow when I reached the age of 19. A new chapter started in my life. My father, in his pursuit of discovering happiness, chose to remarry. Although the news was not wholly unforeseen, it stirred feelings of trepidation inside me. His new wife, Serafina, radiated a pleasant warmth. The compassion emanating from her essence was accompanied with a subtle fortitude and a palpable tenacity that connected with me. And then there was Matthew. Serafina is 1 year my junior. She was reserved, almost timid, with a contemplative gaze that suggested concealed complexities. From the moment she entered our lives, I sensed a transformation, a subtle reconfiguration of the familiar terrain of my existence. Initially, everything felt awkward and alien. It was as if I were traversing a path enveloped in fog, uncertain of my place in this new arrangement. Life had once again diverged from the predictable cadence to which I had become accustomed. Adapting to this new familial dynamic was a delicate interplay of tentative movements and careful explorations. Matthew and I, both adolescents contending with our own insecurities, circled each other, cautiously, akin to two individuals united by circumstance, each striving to find their place in this strange environment. Often spent evenings in the living room, a communal area where we endeavored to cultivate a feeling of cohesion. My father and Serafina, reclining on the sofa, would engage in discussions on work. Their words softly murmured against the television's soothing glow, while Matthew and I sat in recliners, exchanging silent looks. Despite our mutual uneasiness, their house exuded a compassion and warmth that Serafina appeared to produce easily. However, I could not dispel the sense that this was not the family I had previously known. A crucial element of the puzzle seemed to be absent. Endless evenings in our newly established household were a peculiar amalgamation of comforting familiarity and latent tension. My father and Serafina, ensconced on the sofa, engaged in discussions regarding their workdays, future ambitions, and the mundane details that reinforced their bond. Meanwhile, Matthew and I, situated at opposite ends of the room, would intermittently lock eyes, a silent exchange of unarticulated inquiries and a mutual sense of dislocation permeating the atmosphere. Each time our gazes met, I experienced an inexplicable urge to avert my eyes, as if our connection concealed a secret. We were unprepared to see that family meals, once a beloved tradition of my youth, had gradually evolved into a careful endeavor with 4 participants. United by necessity, they learned to negotiate the intricacies of a shared existence, but, underneath the facade of normalcy, an undercurrent of disquiet persisted, a subtle dissonance that resonated in the background. Matthew, perpetually the silent observer, possessed an unusual tendency to serve. Initially, he would silently lay the finest morsels on my plate, his eyes lingering momentarily, a gesture that was both poignant and disconcerting. To me, he was a guy of few words, consistently. He concealed his feelings behind an enigmatic exterior, however, there were moments when I would catch him observing me through his eyes, gripping me with a ferocity that elicited chills along my spine initially. Attributed it to my vivid imagination, a consequence of my fears, perhaps it was only his manner. The expression of concern for a younger brother's endeavor to establish a bond within this new and unfamiliar familial dynamic intensified as days morphed into weeks, resulting in an undeniable tension between us. It manifested as an unspoken language, a silent dialogue that crackled in the air whenever we were in proximity. The distinction between sibling affection and something more profound became obscured, creating a forbidden boundary that neither of us dared to traverse, yet both of us sensed. There were fleeting and disorienting moments when my heart would race. As he approached, I experienced a surge of illicit desire that I endeavored to repress. I loathed this unknown area and the unpleasant alteration in my perspective of him, as he was my stepbrother. Nevertheless, he was something more one evening. Throughout the night, when the house had become quiet, I heard the gentle padding of footsteps in the corridor. It was Matthew, who occasionally entered my room. Typically, it was a quick conversation and a moment of whispered intimacy before we returned to our individual lives, but this occasion was different as he remained, sitting next to me on the bed, his stare fixed upon me. His eyes burned with an intensity one had never seen before, as if he were grappling with unexpressed thoughts, a surge of emotions confined behind his protective facade. The silence enveloped us, heavy with anticipation and laden with unarticulated possibilities, while a tide of uncertainty engulfed me. Matthew's presence in my room, the fervor of his gaze, and the gravity of unvoiced feelings permeated the atmosphere, creating a moment imbued with a significance I struggled to comprehend before I could analyze it further. Offered a nonverbal invitation by a nod. In order for him to remain, we sat together in the darkness, enveloped by a silence that conveyed profound meaning. We were two souls connected by an inexplicable bond, a closeness that transcended the confines of our newly established familial ties. Truthfully, a fondness for Matthew had developed within me. He was undeniably attractive, possessing a quiet charisma that captured me. At times, I struggled to reconcile my burgeoning attraction with the reality that he was, in name, my stepbrother. Guilt would occasionally prick my conscience, yet I would quickly dismiss it, convincing myself that it was merely a consequence of our shared living environment. We were two young individuals navigating the complexities of adolescence under the same roof. It was only natural, I reasoned. To foster a certain intimacy, our rooms were distinct, yet we remained intrinsically connected. We occupied the second floor of the house, our personal spaces divided by a thin wall, while my father resided in the Serafina room on the ground floor. This proximity resulted in instances of awkward intimacy, as the creaking floorboards revealed our late-night movements in the shared bathroom, where our toiletries coalesced. We were both on the verge of adulthood. I am a college freshman. He is a high school senior poised for the next phase of his life, and amidst the ordinary routines, an undeniable tension simmered between us. There were evenings when we gravitated towards each other in the living room after school, the television's soft glow casting long shadows that created an intimate space for our coexistence in calm, foretable silence. Neither of us spoke much, yet the atmosphere crackled with unspoken awareness, our interactions bearing a weight that transcended the conventional sibling bond, an illicit undercurrent that both exhilarated and frightened me over time. I started to understand that my feelings for Matthew had above familial fondness. This understanding engendered bewilderment and remorse, yet I could not deny the way my pulse raced in his presence. Each unintentional meeting on the stairs and every exchanged glance across the dinner table contained an essence of something deeper, something I found difficult to disregard. Then, one serene evening, the situation transformed. My father and Serafina departed for a 5-day trip, leaving Matthew and me alone in the house. Initially, it felt like an unforeseen taste of freedom, an opportunity to indulge in the absence of parental oversight. That night, we ensconced ourselves in the living room, a romantic film illuminating the screen, though neither of us was particularly engaged in the narrative. However, it offered a pleasant setting. For our mutual solitude, I had arranged many nibbles. Dried squid, a bowl of luscious fruit, and a couple of beers constituted a modest pleasure to commemorate our temporary liberty. The movie started, and we engaged in conversation. We laughed softly, our voices resonating in the quiet house, until a scene unfolded on the screen that transformed everything, a couple entwined in a passionate embrace, their desire palpable. In that moment, as if bound by an invisible thread, we fell silent, the atmosphere thickening with unspoken longing, a shared awareness reflecting the intimacy before us. The laughter subsided, and the light-hearted banter diminished, supplanted by a dense tension that lingered heavily in the air. An invisible barrier seemed to have fractured, rendering Matthew and me vulnerable in an unfamiliar illumination. The playful intimacy we had experienced as step-siblings had transformed into something charged and forbidden. The atmosphere was electric with unexpressed desires and a yearning that had been repressed for far too long, as Matthew's gaze remained fixed upon me. His eyes brimmed with an intensity that elicited shivers down my spine, accompanied by an unwanted warmth that enveloped me. Indisputably, I grasped my chilled beer can. In search of stability amidst this emotional tempest, I was unable to fully comprehend the gravity of the situation before Matthew leaned in, enveloping me in his strong embrace. His kiss was urgent and desperate, as if all the unexpressed emotions we had both concealed surged forth. My heart raced, a chaotic symphony of confusion and desire. Despite the turmoil in my mind, my body instinctively adjusted to the forbidden allure within the shadows of that quiet room. We transgressed boundaries of familial affection, surrendering to a passion that had long been simmering beneath the surface. That night marked a pivotal moment, an irrevocable transformation in our relationship. We spent the night intertwined, our bodies communicating a language beyond the capacity of words, devoid of pretension. The previously maintained respectful distance dissipated, supplanted by an undeniable intimacy that lingered the next morning as gentle sunshine permeated the curtains. I lay alongside Matthew, my heart brimming with a blend of elation and apprehension. The room was unchanged, yet everything seemed transformed. We exchanged a wordless glance, a mutual recognition of the significant transformation that had transpired. Our lives would never be the same with my father and Sarah still absent, while we relished in our newfound autonomy. Our communal meals evolved into intimate rituals, our dialogues imbued with a nascent closeness. Each evening, we would nestle together on the sofa, viewing films and exchanging hushed confidences about our bodies, ultimately retreating to the sanctuary of my bed. During those fleeting days, we inhabited a bubble where only we were significant, a youthful couple unencumbered by societal expectations, allowing our love to remain a clandestine flame. Burning brightly, the idyllic moment abruptly concluded with the return of my parents, who arrived with joyous voices. Breaking the enchantment we had created, Matthew and I effortlessly resumed our positions as stepbrothers, concealing our secret. A link concealed under a facade of normalcy, our parents, unaware of the reality, conversed animatedly about their vacation as Matthew and I exchanged knowing glances, the burden of our shared secret pressing heavily upon us. We understood that this was a fact we must protect. A chapter in our lives that would ever stay concealed from the public evolved into a secret habit in the months that ensued following our encounters. Whenever the opportunity presented itself during late nights in an empty house, Matthew would find his way to my room, and we would immerse ourselves in each other's embrace. We clung to our illicit connection, a love conceived in secrecy and nurtured in the shadows. The subsequent days unfolded as a delicate choreography of deception. Matthew and I, united by our shared secret, maneuvered through the familiar routines of family life with heightened awareness. Meals were shared with strained smiles and meticulously measured glances, while the unspoken tension loomed heavily in the air. In the atmosphere, a continual reminder of the forbidden territory we had traversed, guilt lingered as a persistent shadow throughout my sunlit days. Nevertheless, despite the internal conflict, I could not bring myself to sever the bond with Matthew. The nights we shared, the stolen moments of intimacy, had morphed into an addiction, a perilous escape from the intricacies of my reality. I ultimately recognized the precarious path I was navigating and discreetly commenced taking birth control. The pills represented a desperate endeavor to reclaim a semblance of control over the potential repercussions of our illicit affair. I convinced myself that as long as I exercised caution, everything would remain manageable, a fragile illusion that provided temporary solace. However, time, as it invariably does, progressed. Matthew graduated from high school and departed for college, the distance serving as a tangible manifestation of the inevitable transformation that loomed over us. The clandestine nights and stolen moments of whispered intimacy were relegated to the realm of memory. His disappearance created a profound emptiness in recollection. Bittersweet nostalgia for a relationship that was simultaneously exhilarating and detrimental. The burden of our shared history lingered as a perpetual reminder. After experiencing the allure of forbidden fruit following my graduation, I pursued a new beginning, an opportunity to reconstitute my identity beyond the complexities of our entangled familial dynamics. I obtained employment at a digital firm, where the routine and stability provided a much-needed reprieve from the emotional upheaval of recent years. It was during this period that I encountered him. Levi, a man destined to transform my life in unimaginable ways, was the proprietor of a prosperous salon, radiating an air of serene confidence and authentic kindness. From our initial encounter, I experienced a profound sense of security. A long-desired sanctuary, our connection was seamless, a natural affinity that evolved into profound and enduring love. We married, established a house, and welcomed a lovely kid into our lives. My days were filled with satisfaction I had never deemed attainable. The joys of motherhood and the steadfast support of my husband mitigated the painful aspects of my past. However, the memories of Matthew and our illicit affair evoked a persistent guilt that tugged at my heart whenever I gazed into Levi's compassionate eyes. He was a remarkable man deserving of honesty and transparency, yet the apprehension of disrupting our happiness restrained me from confessing. Troubled me, would disclose the truth. Annihilate the existence we constructed collectively. Or would retain the secret indefinitely. The love we had was compromised. I found myself ensnared in a moral dilemma. Conflicted by the want for absolution and the apprehension of dire repercussions, I seek direction and comprehension, perhaps even forgiveness. If you were in my position, what course of action would you pursue? Would you jeopardize everything for the sake of honesty, or would you conceal the past to save the present? The gravity of this dilemma is significant. Weighs heavily upon me, and I yearn for the clarity that remains elusive.